So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your questions, those of you who dropped them into the reception desk box. Some very interesting ones. As my once boss, Tony Robinson, would say, some very pertinent and very impertinent questions, which is good, because we want a little bit of sparky interaction between...
You got names on those questions?
I've got names, yeah, most of them were yours, actually. So our panel members today are... from this side, moving towards Nira, who you've just heard of, John Hopes, Francis Sneddon, Tony O'Connor, Heather Tewkesbury, and obviously Nira, who's just done the last plenary. And actually a great question to help introduce our panellists, because I'm not going to do that. Many of you have already read their profiles on the app. I'm going to ask them a question which will probably help us get to know a little bit about our panellists. So, each in turn, please. I would like all of you to answer this question. I don't necessarily want to do that all the way through. What was your first ever paid job? And what is your current or most recent role? And we'll start with you, John.
Goodness. I have to go a long way back from my first ever paid job. I think I was still at school. And I think the first one was a cleaning job for an industrial scale laundry. And my job was to crawl through these machines, pulling all the fluff out of the machines on Saturday mornings.
Sounds quite Victorian.
Yeah. Tony, I think you know how long ago it was now. Yeah, and then I went up the chimney afterwards. Yeah. And my most recent job, which up until last year was at EY, or Ernst & Young, for those who remember Ernst & Young, before it rebranded. I was a partner in the firm, and I was the global leader of business modelling, which was a global practice of about 900 consultants delivering modelling, analytics and OR solutions to clients around the world across all industry sectors. And I also had a second job, which was global head of transaction analytics, which was more about getting more analytics and data science into the full range of services that EY offered to its clients with the aim of automating some of that service delivery. And so I was doing that till last year. I retired. I wasn't sacked. I retired. So in case you were wondering.
So, Francis.
So my very first job, I was 16 and I went to work in Mackay's, which is a shop, and wasn't even allowed on the shop floor. Wasn't glamorous enough for that. I was the little girl in the back that put the security tags on each of the clothes. I got paid £1.20 an hour, so it was a very, very well paid job. I thought it was a fortune, and it very quickly made me realise that I was going to study very hard for my standard grades the next year and try and do something different. My current job, I suppose I've got two current jobs. Nobody tells you that as you go further up in your career, you accumulate jobs, so you're doing multiple jobs at the same time. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Simulate Corporation. Some of you will know our software, so Simulate software. I am as I said, the CTO there, so I look after all of our product development, thinking about our strategy and kind of lead the business, because we're still an SME, so it's all about doing business as well. And then my other current role is as chair of Scotland IS, which is the trade body for the Scottish IT sector as well, and that's a role I'm very proud of, because it's good to be giving back to the community, and it's given me so much as well.
Very good. Tony.
I think the first job I was paid for was serving drinks behind a bar. I was probably 7. Yes, that was probably illegal, but it was my father's pub. But at least I was getting paid, so that was good. I suppose my first salary job was as a market porter up in a fruit and veg market up in Barnet. Now I've accumulated jobs, just like you. I'm head of the Government Operational Research Service, so we look after around about 800 or so analysts around different government departments, but I'm also the chief analyst at MOD. I count things like aircraft carriers. 1. Nearly 2.
So my first paid job, I think I was 14, and I was a Saturday girl in Woolworths, helping customers, stopping people steal the pick and mix.
Other 16-year-olds.
Well, one particularly inventive girl, younger than me, who was wearing a tracksuit with elasticated cuffs on the bottom of the trousers. Filling her trousers with pick and mix, right? So her legs had this very funny shape. But anyway, so I stopped her before she got out the door. Yes, and my current role is Chief Executive of the Smith Institute.
Thank you. Nira, obviously we know what you do now, but we'd be interested to know what your first paid job was.
Oh, that was actually the presentation as well. It's like working on an RAF base, doing simulation of kitchens.
That was your first paid job?
That was my first paid job.
Oh, so for me, I worked in a grocery shop, and I ultimately became the Chief Marketing Officer of Capgemini, based in Paris. But actually in between that, I was actually a mining engineer, so I actually moved from mining engineering production management in a colliery in Nottingham. So I'm probably the only person in the room who can say that I moved from coal mining to data mining. It doesn't normally get a laugh, and we'll do today. So let's move on to your questions now. So the first one is actually a group of questions, and I want Heather, if she doesn't mind, to start on this one, and then we'll find out if anybody else has anything to add. Given the current market and certainly dynamics of the industry that we are in, how do our analysts differentiate themselves from data scientists to prospective employers, especially when a lot of job adverts are geared towards an OR analyst, but is advertised as a data scientist because the employer doesn't really know about OR? So Heather, as the CEO obviously of a consultancy organisation.
Yeah. So we see this quite a lot with some of our customers. They know they have data and they know they have a problem, and they believe that machine learning or some magic data science is going to solve their problem. What we try and do is show that data science is one part of a whole suite of mathematical techniques and possible approaches that we can actually create. We don't have to rely on things that have already been invented, and that gives a much richer picture in terms of solving their problems. And there was a talk earlier today which highlighted some of the sort of differences between how much insight and how explainable solutions are compared to how they perform. And so when we recruit people for data analyst positions, for mathematical consultant positions, for business development managers, but basically everybody in our organisation comes in with mathematics degree and as a minimum masters, but more usually PhD. And actually it's not, for us, it's not the flavour of statistics or 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 mathematics that they've studied that's important to us. It's their potential to be versatile and to be curious and to explore different ways that their skills can help us. And we're not fixed on the skills that you currently have, we're fixed on the skills that you have already, that's great, but also your willingness to learn and your potential. We want to see people who are interested in things and want to find out things. Now, sometimes we get applications from people and we think this CV is not speaking to me. And I think that's because people have thought about what they're good at. They've not thought about what we want. So I think if you get applications, if you see job adverts that are framed in one way or another, the trick is to think about what is that company thinking in writing that job ad? What's their need? So it might be that they know they've got lots of data and they know they've got problems to solve and they think they need a data scientist. So you can call yourself what you like, really. You know, you've got this sort of numerate, quantitative, logical approach to problems, and that can be called a data scientist or an analyst or a mathematical modeller or whatever. But think about what does that company want, rather than what do you know, what can you give? Try to match those up.
Okay, so as probably one of the largest employers of operational research and data analysts in the country, Tony, would the government OR service have a different view of that, or is it very similar to what Heather just shared?
No, I think it's the same. It's the labelling that's the problem. We actually are data scientists. We've been data scientists for years. It's the fact there's more data, which is requiring a different set of skills. So people need to learn how to interrogate that. And I think I have them on a particular spectrum. Is what most people think data scientists are now, i.e. the people who don't understand it, excuse me, are those interrogative analysts who can pull out insight from large dynamic information, data, MI, whatever it is. But actually they're not solving the problems, they're still in the interrogative space. And it's where OR merges with that and meshes with that, is where they actually take that and say, how do we apply that to our real world situation? What does it mean about how we need to change our business? What do we do differently in a competitive market? And so I don't see there being a big difference between the two. And in fact, government itself is looking at making sure we have functional leadership for analysis, in which is data science, OR, stats, economics, social research, hard science. And it's actually looking at the similarities between the professions rather than distinctions. I do think, I agree with you, there is a bit of a problem with the labelling of jobs that are coming out, because people think we want the new sexy thing, and it's not really what they want. And I like your idea of think about what the company's after rather than what they put down on paper.
So there was a related question actually that maybe John you can give a response to, and Heather touched on it, and as did Tony just then. What other skills, apart from these hard mathematical OR modelling, whatever skills, what other sort of skills were you looking for when you were recruiting people into EY's business modelling practice?
Okay, well let me first of all, if I can, just build a little bit on what Heather said. I agree entirely with Heather's approach, which is, this is very much about selling yourself, and it's very analogous to when a consultant sells a service to a client, which is exactly what Heather said. And when you're doing that, you need to think about the labels that are going to work for the client, so for the person you're selling yourself to in a job situation. But also labels that might differentiate you a bit, because I think if someone's advertising for a data science role, and you can show you have all the competencies that they seem to be looking for a data scientist, then you get yourself in the right place. But then you can say, but my background is OR. You can add that. There you've got maybe got a differentiator that you can then build on and say, what OR brings to you is this. There's just a slight build on that. But in terms of the additional skills, and I'm not talking about the more senior people where you need all sorts of skills, particularly in consulting, like selling. But at the more junior levels, I would say communication skills are absolutely fundamental. I think the other thing is the sorts of jobs we all do are team-based jobs, generally. And I think team skills, the ability to demonstrate you can work well in teams is important. And when I say communication, I mean written as well as verbal. The ability to explain things in a relatively straightforward way to people who are not specialists, not technical people. That's really important. So I think at that level, those are probably two of the key ones I'd be looking for.
Okay, very much. Very good. I'm not going to ask every panel member to answer every question. And in fact, the next question is going to be directed first of all to Francis. So if you were going to create a new startup OR company, which technology or domain area would it focus on in the current market? As the CTO of the company, of course.
I don't know how to answer that without giving away most of my talk for tomorrow.
Use it as an advert.
Where would I focus? So I think this whole world of data science is very, very interesting, and I do agree with everything that everybody has said here, but I think if you roll forward in the future, 10 years or 15 years from now, and we see all of these new data sources that are materialising. We've got IoT, we've got dark data, we've got immense kind of sources of data that are appearing. And what businesses are looking to do is create tools from that data. They're looking to monetize that data and create tools. So I think in terms of an OR company or a startup company, I'd be creating a company that knew how to take those tools and do that initial bit of the analysis, but then to build them into systems and build them into tools that the organisations would then embed into their operational processes. I think that's where things will go, and I think we've got a lot to add to that field.
Nira, would you be investing in Obama hood, or would you have a different thing up your sleeve?
Well, I think one of the challenges, certainly for Alan Barron, probably was the challenges for quite a number of retail and other companies out there, is again, and this is almost getting pushed from the, let's say, the computer science community, saying, here's machine learning, put your data in, here's the answer. Why? Because the black box said so. And what you find is that the leadership will say, some of them will say, yeah, because data science, machine learning is a buzzword, oh, we will accept that, so we're henceforth we'll make £1 million decisions based on that. Or some of them say, actually, we want to understand what's going on, and we want to understand what's going on inside of the black box. So I know that there has been quite a bit of research lately where they're saying, is there a way of actually going into these black boxes? Is there a way of actually doing, let's say, almost like a reverse engineering? And that's ongoing research. So if somebody can actually come up with a proficient way of actually reverse engineering, let's say, all these machine learning algorithms, and actually say, right to the leadership, saying, this is what the insight is giving, here it is challengeable and it's transparent, that would be something that I would invest in. And Obama hood as well.
What about yourself, Heather? What would you be building? Not without giving away any commercial confidentiality.
Of course. I think the point that Nira just made about sort of having transparency and trust in, or the ability to have trust in some AI techniques is something I see as particularly important for some of our customers who have safety critical systems or kind of systems relating to society. So, the easy example is, do you trust a self-driving car to make a decision between hitting, if there are two people in the road, it's going to hit one of them, who are you going to choose for it to hit? And nobody wants to take responsibility for that decision. So I think there are still some really big questions for safety critical or big society questions, and trying to get somewhere with that sort of trust, bias, transparency question around AI and machine learning.
So for those, any of you who were not at the Blackett lecture where Sir Alan Wilson from the Turing Institute gave an amazing talk about AI and OR and how OR may benefit from AI and vice versa, I think the ending that he gave us was a big challenge, that there are huge societal issues that OR absolutely can help to get answers to. Not necessarily solve completely, but definitely the practice of OR could actually get that. John, you've obviously dealt with him directly as a result of that event. Do you want to just pick up on that point?
Well, I think points already been made that there are endless opportunities related to the new technology and to the big data that is driving the new technology opportunity. And I think you can see so many niches actually out there as well. Areas which have much more data than they've ever had before, doing nothing with it, and therefore there's a massive opportunity. I mean, if I just took my previous job, where I was focusing on one aspect of what EY did, which was mergers and acquisitions transactions, where nobody's using big data. And Ernst & Young, because they have a consulting branch, are starting to think about it. What about the investment banks? They're not doing it. Great opportunity. So there are opportunities like that all over the place. And I agree with you, Alan's point about the role of OR and AI together. I think it is so powerful, particularly when you think about areas of AI application that are really problem solving. And what is OR if it's not a methodology for solving problems? And you bring the OR methodology alongside the AI technology, and you will have a much more powerful solution. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And I've seen it in action when you've had OR people delivering AI solutions. It's a different approach to the whole problem. Okay. And I think it's very powerful.
Okay, so on a completely different tack, there's a couple of questions which were related to training and personal development. So Tony, if you wouldn't mind just picking up first of all on this one. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to convince the powers that be to fund or prioritise training. How best can we influence those with the purse strings, and you clearly have a significant purse string? And should we or how do we decide between what's linked to what was mentioned a little bit earlier? How should we focus our time, efforts and energy in terms of technical training versus softer, if you like, softer methodological, not hard methodological training, but workshop-y, building rapport with clients, etc.
So, on the first, if you find out the answer, can you let me know?
I had to get a budget.
I think I don't think I've ever managed to spend the totality of my training budget. It's never been that much of a problem. I think the real problem has been people being able to give up the time to do the training, and that's been a much bigger aspect when you're working in business, and it's critical. So I think in my full career, I think I've only refused one piece of training because it was just ridiculously expensive and it was in a foreign country, but you know, that it was taxpayers' money, you couldn't do that. But otherwise, we just generally said yes. So I don't think that's necessarily the issue. But I do like your point about the balance of what the training is. We recruit people who come in with a first degree, not just in OR, but in many different disciplines, many different sciences mainly. The analytical skills they have are in fact good enough for most of the problems that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I'll tell you, government's full of problems. But you can actually use your basic scientific logic understanding and apply it. You might be using different sets of data, but it's a different problem you're solving. But you've actually got most of the skills. So I don't think there's an awful lot of the technical skills. I think there's something in the being able to understand the problem archetypes, to recognising that this is a simulation problem, this is a stock flow problem, you know, this is a stochastic process, this we're here in Monte Carlo, we better, whatever it might be. Being able to apply those, but actually anybody who comes in and is employed can go and look up how to apply those techniques afterwards. They don't need the skills up front, they just need to understand the family of problems. Your point though about the balance, I would probably say, it's easy to say half and half, but there's a mixture. We ask everyone to be doing about 100-ish hours of CPD a year. That doesn't sound a lot, but actually trying to get people to record the fact that they've done 100 hours of training is quite difficult. But then within that, oh well, I watched that TED talk, oh I went to that lecture, oh I went to that talk. I went to one recently which had nothing to do with my current job, but was about the Russian nuclear power, basically. That's all I'm really allowed to say. But it was fascinating just to learn something different. And I think that learning then starts to make you think differently about what you're doing. So I'd say there's definitely a balance. You, as John has already alluded to, the further up that tree you go, you do need some of those softer skills because you're less and less analytical and more managerial of analysts, but you've got to sell and sell and sell. But I don't think you need an awful... If you come through with a good degree, you don't need an awful lot more technical skills unless you're in a very niche area.
Anyone else on the panel want to add to that?
I can. So I think that from our point of view, so we're quite different from Tony's organisation. So we have 25 people. So for us, we have a training budget and we set it in the budget as part of the budget every year. And it might be that somebody wants to go on an agile project management or a Prince 2 5-day, several £1,000s training course, which would be quite a significant chunk of our training budget. And so what we want to do, we want to think about, okay, if we invest in that, how can you share the best practice that you learn with the other project managers or technical leads or business development managers, whatever their role is. So for a significant investment in a particular person for a training activity, we'll want to follow that with a session with their colleagues about sharing the best practice, what they've learnt, and working some of those things. If we hear good ideas and we try them out in a few cases, we'll want then to build those into our quality assurance procedures so that actually it becomes part of what everybody does in the business. So that's one way of sort of making the benefit of a training course more widely applicable than just the one individual. The other thing that we do is try and take advantage of things that don't particularly cost a lot of money, but are interesting. So we might have people who shadow. We have technical leads, and we have staff when they first join us who they might aspire to become a technical lead on a project, or a project manager, or a business development manager, or a line manager, or something like that. So we allow those people to shadow one or more of these roles to kind of, it's almost like learning on the job, just as part of what they do, to learn best practice and to have more communication with their peers. We also have a scientific board, which is a group of academics from around different UK universities, and every member of the scientific board mentors at least one member of staff, usually more actually, and that also provides a connection for our staff to go out into the academic, to reach into the academic world, where we have a lot of strong relationships anyway, but it means that there's a kind of extra step for that technical curiosity, you know, something about current research, what's just been published, who's researching this topic. And so those relationships are really important, and that academic mentoring our technical staff especially gives them some, you know, just it's kind of a different angle on the work that they're doing. It gives them some different kind of element of inspiration. So that's very important as well. And there was one other thing I was going to mention, but I've forgotten what it is. So I'll stop there.
But that's actually a great lead into a question which has been asked, which is around mentoring.
Oh, okay.
You know, I personally benefited a lot from mentors in my life, and I've had mentees that I've tried to help through their careers. Would the panel just like to share, because I know, certainly from talking to my two daughters who are coming through their early career stages at the moment, are looking for mentors. When should you look for a mentor? What should you look for in a mentor? What's the sort of thing that you would like to get out of that mentor-mentee relationship? Nira, do you want to kick off on that?
Well, one of the things I'd say about when you're looking for a mentor is, usually when somebody thinks about a mentor, you're thinking you're looking for one person, and that's going to be that one person for the next 20 years. It's not like that. You could have a variety of different mentors which you speak to in different occasions, you know, at different frequencies. So, for instance, you know, the person who I'd regard as a mentor, I probably only spoke to him, let's say, probably 3 or 4 times a year, and it's so example, if I'm putting on an event, I'd phone him up and say, do you mind doing a talk, and then we're having this conversation. But as somebody that's much further down the road as a mathematical modeler, he's somebody that's saying, okay, I don't need to be exactly like him, I don't need to be a carbon copy of him, but it's saying, what can I learn from him, what can I learn from this person, that person, that person, and put it together to have my own spin on it. Because at the end of the day, we don't want somebody, if I mention somebody, you wouldn't want 100 Nira Chamberlains out there, you want to be your own self, you know what I mean? You have to learn my mathematical modelling journey, but be yourself, but learn those lessons. So it's not, so to answer the question, I don't have one mentor, and I don't mentor, and whoever I mentor, I don't say, you must not speak to anybody else, you know, because they may not agree with me. So, no, this is my view. Speak to that other person who probably has much more of a statistical background, or much more of a stronger oil background, and then pick what you like and to develop your own career.
Francis, what about yourself? What's your experience of mentoring?
Yeah, I think very similar. I would say that I think there's definitely a misconception about having a mentor that stays with you for your entire career. I mean, I'm going to contradict myself because I have had that actually in some of my senior managers, but I think it is about finding the right person for you, and I think you do it in 2 different ways. I think there's 2 different kinds of mentors. I think there's the ones that you learn from and you absorb information from, and whether that's technical skills or whether that's probably more likely soft skills, because I think the soft skills are often best taught from a mentor. and they're probably very good coaches, you know, so it's somebody that you can connect with and that makes you think and you feel comfortable with and you feel you can be open with and have those conversations, and whenever you do that you learn something about yourself, so they're really good at drawing on that self-awareness. And then I think there's another kind of mentor which we don't talk about a lot, and I think it's about the mentors that can access new networks for you. So I think very early on in your career, your network is about your peers and your colleagues that you're working with, and as you become kind of more senior in the organisation, you need your network to get wider, firstly inside of the organisation and then externally, but it's really tough. I remember being junior and the first time somebody told me that I should go out and network. And it just made everything. I thought, well, okay, well, I'm just going to stay at this level forever because I'm not doing that at all. But I think if you find the right people that can help to do those introductions and help you see that it's not that awkward thing of just kind of walking up to somebody randomly saying, "Hi, I'm Francis, do you want to be my friend?" So I think it's about the different types of mentors as well, not just a relationship.
John, Tony?
Yeah, I'd agree entirely with that, and I was particularly going to mention the coach word again, because I think particularly as you're getting further on in your career, one of the things you'll face is there are many choices for which direction you might go in, and strangely enough it becomes quite daunting, you know, and sometimes you just feel like I've got to push on this direction here, but actually that might not be the right thing to do, and therefore the mentor as coach and sounding board, the person who helps you to think through your choices and so on, becomes quite an important part of your personal development at one point. And I agree also entirely that it potentially also opens up your network as well. And that's where I think Nira's point about having multiple coaches is really important, because they can maybe introduce you to different aspects of the network that you need to have to be a success.
Just a couple of things to add. Totally agree. You shouldn't have a mentor. You should have as many as you can find that can help you. Tips for getting them. If someone gives you a mentor, reject it. It will never be a perfect match. It's like someone choosing who you should go on a date with. It's not going to work. Well, most of the time. So you need to find someone that you like and you admire, and they've done something that you haven't done but you would like to do. And then go and ask them. Now, most people are very busy people, and don't be offended if you get a couple of no's in that process. But actually, quite a lot of people, you know, there's a bit of, "Oh, that's quite nice, I didn't know you like that," and they probably will do something. They'll at least meet you for a coffee and start off a conversation. I also agree, which has been said a couple of times, you don't have to see them every week. You know, every 6 months there's a touch base and catch up with what they're doing. I think I've probably got 3 active mentor, coachy type people who I just use as sounding boards. And I'm probably mentoring about half a dozen people at the moment, but all in very different levels because they have different demands. So I worry about it being one thing. It's not one thing. It's what do you want to do next in your career? Well, who's done that? How do you go about finding out about that? Well, there's 2 people. I'll ask both of them. They'll have different ideas. Well, which one suits me better? And you start building it that way.
Could I just add a point about how you find a mentor? Because I totally agree. It needs to be somebody that inspires you, or you think has some kind of different perspective that you could learn from, and that can come from anywhere basically. So in my career, I've had mentors who've been previous bosses. I contacted somebody who I heard interviewed on Radio 4, who just said some things in her interview that I thought, God, I so recognise what she's saying. And I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? So I looked up on CEO email lists, there's a website for it, found her email address, emailed her, thought, what's the worst that can happen? She won't reply. But she did. And all I asked for was 20 minutes of her time. Now, she didn't actually give me 20 minutes of her time, but she gave me half an hour with one of her colleagues, another C-suite colleague. And that's developed, and she's introduced me to networks and given me things to read, and sometimes I'm so kind of inspired by it. I stay up all night, I'm reading this book that she's given me, and this is just chiming with me, and that's the kind of feeling that I like to get from mentors, but finding them can come from all sorts of places.
But just, I think you're spot on there. Is that there's something else though that you said. I think I understood. It was your ex-line manager's line manager. Never have a mentor in your line management chain.
No.
The whole purpose of this is to get a different perspective.
Yeah.
So just give you that tip. I was really lucky once at one point in my career when I was working in the Department of Health and I just joined, and I happened to know the permanent secretary. It's not going to happen to everybody. And I said, can I have 20 minutes of your time? And he was late, and it was the end of the day. And I sat down and I talked to him about an hour and a half, and it was fantastic. And the question, I don't use this all the time because you'll really annoy people. The question I asked was, who are the 10, 12 people in the organisation I should talk to? And he gave me a list. You need to talk to X, you need to talk to Y, they all give you a brilliant view on what's working. She always complains about stuff, worth going to talk to her. And then I was able to send out this email saying, well, the PermSec thinks you're one of the 10 most important people in the department that I should talk to. Tick. And then I got coffee with all of them, which made a difference. And 3 of them I'm still in touch with. So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, let's take it down a different track now. It's a shame in many respects that Paul, our first plenary speaker this morning, couldn't be with us on the panel. He does apologise. He would have loved to have been here. And I think this question would almost certainly have gone in his direction. And I did ask him for a few comments. So the question is, in this current digital world of AI and robotics and all that jazz, why is academic career progression hamstrung by the bottleneck of publication to peer-reviewed journals? So in the absence of Paul, John, I know you have multiple contacts with the professors of OR and all the malarkey. Would you like to give your view?
I will, but I'll be interested in Paul's comments as well. And I do have quite a lot of involvement now with people like the Council for Mathematical Sciences and so on, where I meet a lot of academics, and I'm focusing more and more on issues in the world of research in relation to OR, because there are some big issues around at the moment that the OR Society can help with. First, coming back to the question, I'm not sure there's necessarily a conflict between these two. I think that research in the areas of AI, new technologies, how they can be deployed and so on, is an area that we know we have plenty of people in the world of OR involved, because there's at least 7 or 8 Alan Turing Fellows from the world of OR. So I know it's an area of research that is important to OR. And that research undoubtedly has to get out to a market somewhere, which is going to be through journals, I'm afraid. That's the way it works at the moment. Now, those journals are themselves changing, deploying more technology, more open access, etc., etc. But as it stands at the moment, that is how research gets out to the wider research community, and that is the objective of research. That is why we pay so much money, taxpayers' money, for research that then gets shared in the research community. So on one level, I'm not totally sympathetic. I am sympathetic that researchers feel they're on a kind of treadmill that is preventing them from doing other things of value. That I'm definitely concerned with. And that I would say, and I think Paul probably say the same, it's probably not as bad in this country as it is in some others. And I think that it is recognised that there are other things that researchers do that are of value. And one of the examples I'll give you is, in a world where research is focusing more and more on demonstrating impact, I think the value that OR researchers bring in the world of mathematical sciences to be able to give case studies of impact is becoming more and more recognised within some of the schools of mathematics, for example, and therefore the fact that the OR researchers bring that is actually highly valued in their career progression. And that will get more so over time as well. But I understand the way the world's set up, and many people do feel on that treadmill. But I don't know, what did Paul say?
Well, so it's hard for me to paraphrase someone like Paul. I've known Paul for 20 odd years. We've worked together at Capgemini for a while before we went back into academia. But what he did say was, they're lucky they aren't in America. You heard his presentation this morning. He was pretty blunt and straightforward in his language. His view is that it's a lot more friendly in Europe and in the UK in particular. His counsel was, just going back to the mentoring and coaching, make sure if you are a researcher, if you're going through an academic career, encircle yourself with people who are supportive. Come to events like this and present your work in a safe peer review environment, because the sort of feedback you'll get here will almost likely be a lot more constructive than you might get necessarily through a very hard journal review process. Try and write things with colleagues. Do it jointly. Do some joint papers first to actually get yourself into the swing of things, get yourself published as a co-contributor. But at the end of the day, I think John's point, the process is what the process is, and as much as we might want to change it, it is what it is, and therefore we have to go through the process. I don't know, you're obviously a visiting fellow at Loughborough. Nira, do you have a view, or do you get involved with your colleagues there in this space?
I mean, what we're finding, let's say, with more connections with Loughborough is that they are really pushing to have more connection with industry. Yeah, you know, so Heather can say this more better than myself, but that's, you know, when you actually find that saying, okay, yes, you actually are publishing, you're actually publishing your journals, but also this is how your mathematics is actually used to impact industry. Mathematics hour, that's how actually it's see it. So, you know, it's making sure that we have a much more unified community where industry and academic actually join together and say, look, you're not alone, we're all in this together.
And actually, the main OR conference, the Making an Impact stream, which happens, I think, on the Wednesday, is all about both research and academia and practitioners demonstrating through their case studies and the work that they're undertaking how they are making an impact with whatever it is they're doing. So let's move on. Let's lighten it a little bit. Nira, we heard a lot from you about some of the things that you were very proud of in your career, but we had 4 questions from different people about what has been your biggest achievement, what are you most proud of in your career. So each in turn, the most proud moment in your career so far, starting with, let's start with Frances.
Oh, it's a really difficult question to answer. Can I pick 2?
Of course you can.
So I think as a person that's, you know, you've been an analyst and you've always been used to doing, I think still the kind of the personal achievements of doing something yourself is it always still kind of makes you kind of proud. And recently we put Simulate online, so moved it from the desktop to online. And the reason I'm really proud of that is because everybody told us it couldn't be done, and we went through countless teams of developers that told us it couldn't be done. And taking a little bit of kind of OR thinking and looking at a problem in a different way, we managed to prove that it could be done. And that takes me to the second part, because as much as I was part of doing that, it was actually a team effort. And I think now at this kind of stage in my career, it's when I think to all the things I'm most proud of, it's the things that my team achieves and the things that I've helped my team do, and how I've, you know, certain people that you've mentored and you've seen them flourish, and it's things like that. So the things that I'm most proud of are actually everybody else's achievements.
Tony?
Getting a job, to actually use my mathematical skills, having the honour of working right inside the heart of government. A number of people who have heard me talk about this a lot before, we'll cover some of it tomorrow, but you know, walking into the cabinet room and presenting stuff to prime ministers is, you know, it's there, not much better than that. Running an induction course, when one of the students came up to me afterwards and said I was about to leave the profession, I'm now going to stay, and just making a difference. It's the small things.
Well, 2 things again, like Francis. So one more frivolous than the other. So the most important one to me right now is seeing the people who work in the Smith Institute develop as people, as, you know, with the technical skills and ability, but also their ability to just kind of take on the world, you know, and just feel like they're gaining confidence and you know, just being a really important part of the team. So very similar to Francis, I think. The more frivolous one, I could pick from several examples, but they all relate to my time working as a modelling development manager at Cadbury. And I think the one that probably stands out because they named something after me. So Cadbury had this tradition where if you designed something, they would call it, they would name it after you. So do you know the boxes of roses and things like that that are kind of smaller at the bottom and bigger at the top? They were named after a lady called Dorothy, and they're called Dorothy cartons. So this is an example. And you don't know it unless you work in Cadbury, but that's fine. So there was one project I worked on with miniature heroes, which is like the Cadbury equivalent of celebrations. And the problem was that the lids weren't sitting, there were plastic lids on round cardboard tubs. The lids weren't sitting straight, so they couldn't be stacked on shop shelves. So what Cadbury were having to do was to send them off to a separate processing company to manually stick bits of like stickers or sellotape on both sides of the lid to hold them straight. So I redesigned the lid, the inside of the lid, so they had these sort of fins so that they would sit straight. And it meant that they could sell more because they'd stack them higher on the shop shelves and they'd be easier to go through the packaging process. So these fins inside the lids of miniature heroes are called the Tewkesbury buttresses. That's
John,
a bit frivolous.
beat the Tewkesbury buttresses. I can't most proud moment of my illustrious career.
Oh goodness. No, I can't be that. But I think you know, it's what am I most proud of? I think, you know, for the last 20 years, my focus was very much on building a business, like, you know, generating lots of fees from clients and so on. But that's actually not what makes me proud. It is actually the people side of things, and it's similar to something that Hella said. And I think for me it was realising that when I joined EY 18 years ago, I was the only modelling and analytics partner in the whole of EY globally. And when I left, there were 30. And it's just that having seen those people come through that development route, and it's not just, you know, I helped some of them along the way, and that's great, but and then they helped each other, and you know, you've seen that growth in that group of people, and they're all across the world. And of that 30, 7 are in the US alone, who I remember telling me there's no market for modelling in the US. So, you know, that I think I'm quite proud of, actually.
So apart from Obama Hood and boxing, the invisible boxer,
Okay.
what's your most satisfying part of your career so far?
I think it has to be two. I think it's a project-wise, work-wise, would have to be the new aircraft carrier. Somewhere in that new aircraft carrier, there's a placard and it says Dr. Nira Chamberlain. So that's going to be one of my proudest moments. And also actually giving back, going into, like I work for a charity that sends me to like state schools, and I have to stand up in front of 200 children and say, this is modelling and this is mathematics, and you just open the mind and they get inspired. I mean, that's going to be, I mean, when you hear them go, wow, you know, and then asking you all questions like, tell me how much you're earning, and I say, oh well, think of a figure between 0 and $1 million, and I'm much closer to 0. You know, that's inspiring.
Okay, let's bring us now from proud moments of, you know, elation. One of our attendees, and maybe a quicker answer to this one because we're getting towards the end, and I've got a couple of questions that I don't want to miss out on. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made that isn't confidential, and what did you learn from it? Tony, would you like to go first on this one?
That isn't confidential.
Yeah, it's not confidential.
Again, it's on the personal space. Choosing the wrong person to work for, and the corollary of that is choose your boss, not the job, because you'll learn a lot more. I ended up going for a job that I thought I was going to like, and I ended up working for someone who was basically not very good. And it soured a relationship, and it took about 3 years to get out of it. So that was a mistake. I didn't look for what I was really after, which was the mentoring bit that we were talking about earlier. I went for the job, wrong thing.
Frances?
I think moving from sort of being a doer to moving into management, and I think it took me a lot of time, not a lot of time, but it took me years to realise that what had got me there wasn't what was going to get me to the next stage, and that I needed a very different skill set, and it wasn't about how much I could do anymore. And you got to remember, I grew up in a startup, you know, where you worked 16-hour days as kind of standard. You just were going after it all the time, just trying to make the business fly. So you're just used to being a doer, and so then it took a long time to realise that my job now was to get others to do and to inspire them and motivate them and coach them kind of through that, and not pick up the pieces when it was going wrong.
John, biggest mistake?
Oh goodness. Well, I think when I was at KPMG, before I went to EY, I was leading business modelling there, and I made an organisational mistake. And I was forced to take a team. I had a team of about 40 people, and we reorganised down industry sector lines. And I was told, you've got to reorganise your business down industry sector lines. And I split it in 4, one big team, one medium-sized team, 2 very small ones. The 2 very small ones lasted about 6 months in the new organisation. I then realised that I'd organised myself out of a job because none of the teams was big enough to support a partner, and I'd just been promoted to partner. So I had to find myself another job. So I then went off and did something completely different I'd never done before, leading another team that had a vacancy for someone to lead it. That actually wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because I was going to say it's sometimes a good thing to reinvent yourself at certain stages in your career. So that for me personally worked out okay. It worked out really badly for the business that I left behind, that was split in 4, and 2 stagnated, 2 disappeared. I learned a lot from that.
I suppose so when you're at in a young stage of your career, sometimes you get advice which is you think is actually constructive, which actually is destructive. So, for instance, being persuaded not to pursue a PhD, and listening to say, look, I should do a PhD in mathematics because of A, B, C, or D, and not listening to my parents, what they actually said about that. They said, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. I should have listened more to my parents and to the other people, and not been discouraged not to go for my dream.
Heather?
Well, I can tell you what I thought was a big mistake, but it turned out okay. Is that allowed?
Did it involve buttresses?
No. No. Is that allowed?
Of course.
Okay. So once upon a time I had an appraisal with my boss, and I thought it would be a good idea as part of to suggest that we had some 360-degree feedback. So I prepared some feedback for my boss as well. And so after my appraisal, I went through my feedback for him, with him, rather than with his boss, directly, and he didn't recognise the things that I was saying, and I drove home. He didn't look me in the eye for the rest of the afternoon, and I drove home thinking I might have just cost myself my job. But he phoned me the next day and said, I've been thinking about what you said, and actually I think I see what you mean. So it worked out that between us we thought about some changes that we could make that would make the situation much better, and so it turned out really quite well in the end. But at the time I thought that was a big mistake.
Very good. I think we've got time just for one more question, and I've got 2 here, so I need to choose which one I'm going to pick. So it's like, have to be a quick fire one. If you get through this one, maybe I'll do them both. If you hadn't gone into OR, what would you have done, John?
Well, I tried not to. All the jobs I applied for at university were in sales and marketing, but Shell offered me a job in OR. No, I thought, well, Shell's a good employer, I better go and take that job and try and find something from there.
Very good. Francis?
I was all set to be a lawyer.
A lawyer?
Yeah, got accepted, was going hold down that kind of track until met some students of current law who told me that it wasn't quite the early law, but I don't know if you remember that TV show that I put so OR was a bit of an almost mistake kind of choice. It's after that, but yeah. But now I think if I hadn't done OR, I probably would have done computer science. I think.
Really bad mistake.
London tour guide.
Very good. Heather, what did you do?
I don't think I did go into OR, but I just kind of ended up doing it. But
OR is life, we all do.
well, yeah.
Or we do something else.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Either a lawyer or a classical musician playing a clarinet.
Oh, very good. Well, you got through that quick enough for me to ask the final question. So, what do you wish you knew, knowing what you know now, before you started in OR? Again, quick fire. John?
Oh, goodness. I think it's something about how the skills you need in your career change so much as you go through, and what you're doing at the start is going to be very different to what you're doing at the end.
That's a good answer. Can I steal that one?
No.
What do you say?
I thought, well, the course I did was management science rather than OR, so, and I think it probably took me about 6 months into that course to realise that what I'd signed up for was not what I thought it was. It wasn't quite as kind of analytical, and it was much more soft. And I totally value all of that now, but I think it took me a long time to get my head around that kind of part and just and understand forever how much that soft side is so important.
It's a repetition of something I said earlier. I'd find out about my next boss before I move. Or go and talk to not him or his manager or her manager. I'd go and talk to the people who work for them and find out what it's like. They want you, but actually do you want them?
It's okay to challenge.
You don't need anyone's permission to be a great OR practitioner.
Very good. So, I hope you'll all join me in thanking our 5 panellists for the